In today's video, I'm going to be covering some interesting topics that you've probably, maybe most of you might not have heard before. It's to do with this term, the phenomena, and human potential. There was an interesting interview I recently watched on the channel called Engaging the Phenomena, an interview with Jim Semivan. And in it, he describes that the truth is indigestible, that it's so difficult to say that basically the president can't actually give real disclosure because it's too much for people to handle. He gets into the idea of quantum physics and the idea that, the atom is mostly empty space and that we're really kind of illusory or, non-physical more than we are physical. This is like established kind of science for quite a while. I think people don't have a problem with it. I would say I don't think that really scientists have been talking about, this idea for quite a bit. So I don't think that's going to collapse society. So his idea is that the world would kind of collapse if given the broader picture, and paints it in maybe it's not such a good thing. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you a passion or an interest of mine. In the words of Chris Ramsey, kind of suspend your disbelief. Just kind of listen to it without judgment, and you can form an opinion at the end. You don't have to believe everything I'm saying. However, I think just hearing kind of the data might be interesting for you. So I'm talking about saints, enlightened saints. Specifically, I have the most knowledge with Indian saints. I'm not all that familiar with saints outside of India, to be quite honest. I do live half the year in India for the last number of years. Yeah, I have a particular appreciation or attraction and interest to saints from India. And so, yeah, I'm going to be telling you about a handful of different saints. I mean, these are human beings. They have a human body, but there's something different about them. They've got a divine awakening, if you want to call it, but there's something about them that transcends the normal human egotistical view of who you think you are into something much more beautiful. And I think it's really important for people to hear that this exists as a possibility, that there are souls in this world that have an enlightened presence. They have attained a level of consciousness which is beautiful and remarkable and comes with all kinds of what you might consider miracles. And so we're going to get into that in this video.
I've had people who I know are in the know, and I've mentioned this before, and one of them told me the truth is indigestible. It's not something that we would be able to fully grasp or entertain, and that it's like, it would be like telling somebody something that they can't do anything about, and they don't know what the repercussions of that would be. It's so great. It's so world changing and transformational, and maybe not in a good way, So
I mean, what could be so jarring? What could be so disruptive? I mean, bless you.
thank
Like
you.
like the idea that we're being visited by another advanced intelligence that's more advanced than us. I mean, do you think, or is it something else?
I think it's much deeper than that. Lou once mentioned to me, we were chatting about this, and I asked Lou one day what he thought, and he drew a Venn diagram, on a board, and and in the middle of the Venn, was, well, one side was consciousness and the other side was quantum theory. And the shaded part in the middle, he said, that's probably where this is. And when you think about that, what are the two things we really don't know all that much about, or that, could be extraordinarily scary? And consciousness, is it local or is it, non-local? If it's not local, not produced by the brain or the body or the mind, it really means that there is a universal consciousness that we're part of, that we're tapping into. Quantum theory, in the very early days of quantum theory in the 20s and 30s, most of the people who grasped what it actually meant was that we're immaterial, that we're basically an illusion, and that atoms in general, we've come to find this to be true, are just basically invisible. There's no matter there, and that that we're just energy forms. Well, think about that for a second. If that's the case, how would the president describe that? How would the president go on national television and say, maybe he tried to do a controlled, and I'm sure, and I know they've thought about this, and I know they thought about ways to do this, and they never can come to any kind of agreement, and they always come to the agreement that it's probably best not to say anything until we have a better understanding. But what the hell do you say? I mean, you come out and you say, there's another presence in the universe which visits us. And we don't understand it, but it's capable of transforming itself into anything it wants to do. It can manipulate matter. It can manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum. It can show us things that may be real or may not be real. It can be real and not real at the same time. I mean, you can just go on and on and on. And then this whole idea of sovereignty comes in, free will comes in. And then you're worried about, will society be able to withstand it? Socioeconomically, what will happen? Will things stop religiously? There are so many aspects surrounding this. I'm sure people have whispered in some people's ears, do you really want to do this? Do you really want to go out and talk about this publicly? Do you have any kind of fallback position when people start asking the million questions they're going to have, and you're basically saying we're powerless against a entity or entities that are here, we can't see, we have no idea of their intentions and capabilities. It may mean that we're just immaterial. I mean, you can get into, there's so many avenues. And then what does that open up? Let's just say, it's a combination of quantum theory, like Lou said, it probably could be, and consciousness, two of the grandest problems that we have. I mean, in physics and in neuroscience, and we can't wrap our arms around it. How the hell do you throw that out there? And it's like this big old meatball hanging out there, right? And you're asking people, who are consumed with their daily life. You know what it's like. You got a family, you know what I mean? You get up, you got a job, you got to do all this kind of stuff. And then somebody throws this huge thing at you and said, oh, by the way, we're not alone in the universe. And these other entities have godlike powers compared to us, can pretty much do what the hell they want, when they want. And we have no idea what the hell they're doing and why they're doing it. And they tell us stories. They tell us what? Two stories. They always tell us it's the environment and it's the nuclear problem, right? Those are the only two stories we hear. We don't hear about where humans came from. We don't hear about where they came from. They always say to people, well, you wouldn't understand, right? You wouldn't understand. So we can't get into that. Is that real? Is that not real? Are they 100 years more advanced than we are? Or are they, possibly 3 or 4 million years more advanced than we are? Are they an ultra terrestrial race that lives on the planet with us, but maybe in another time dimension, that maybe they're vibrating a little bit faster than we are, so we can't really see them.
And in terms of the nature of reality that Jim Semivan talks about not really being real and that people can't handle it and how it would kind of collapse society, I want to start with a particular saint. He was called Ramakrishna, and Ramakrishna was, in my opinion, and in most people's opinions that would be knowledgeable about this particular subject, he's considered a fully what you might call God-realized saint. So inside him there is no individual ego. There is just a universal God consciousness within that body. This might be hard for some people to believe, and Christians might have a hard time with it, and I appreciate that. So again, suspend disbelief. You don't have to believe it, but you can at least listen with an open mind and make, an educated thought about it at the end. You don't have to agree to any of it. So I'll carry on with the story. So Ramakrishna, God realized saint, lives in India, and this was a long time ago, hundreds of years ago. So we kind of get into the concept of guru. So a guru is a teacher, a spiritual teacher that is a high elevation spiritually. So God realized enlightened saint. They're considered guru. They have a follower who is learning from the guru, like a disciple or a devotee. And so Vivekananda was his main devotee. I'm going to recount an experience, and this is from memory. I'm not reading from source, so it might not be 100%, but I can give you the core of it. Vivekananda goes up to Ramakrishna, and he starts to experience the world around him whirling around, and disappearing into like an infinite black void of space. Like all the material elements of the world have dissolved, and it's like a black hole that he's in, and then his body disappears or starts to disappear, and Ramakrishna's form is like the only thing left, and then that starts to disappear and everything's kind of disappearing, and he has this panic that he thinks he's dying, like this is death. And he shouts at Ramakrishna and says, "You can't do this, like I've got family, like I can't die." And the experience stops. And interestingly, many, many years later, when his guru died, when Ramakrishna left the body, Vivekananda became a kind of a guru to people that were devotees of him. And later on in his life, it's believed that Vivekananda had also attained enlightenment at a certain point in his life. And one of the devotees of Vivekananda said, "Can you explain the concept of Maya to me?" Maya in the Vedic philosophy of India is the concept that the world is an illusion. It's a dream, essentially, the dream and play of God. It's the play of consciousness, that the whole universe is in a temporary, ever-changing appearance on the screen of a universal consciousness, and that ultimately the reality is the formless reality beyond form that is eternal, never-changing, beyond time and space, beyond life and death. And that is what you would call maybe the mind of God, or the pure potentiality. If you think of physics, you have the idea that things, okay, so like you have the observer effect, where the observer is present, and then the electron kind of collapses the wave function and creates some kind of form based on an observer being present. And so it's the idea that, and before there was an observer, there's the wave potential. So this particle can be anything and everything all at once, and it's got this pure infinite potential. And then the observer, and it collapses the wave function, and it becomes something perceivable as an object, so to speak. So with that in mind, you can think that the Maya, the illusion, is the collapsed wave function, but the reality is the pure wave, the infinite wave of the pure potentiality before it collapses into a form. So Vivekananda, back to Vivekananda, he's asked about Maya, the illusion, and he says, "Okay, ask me something else." It's difficult to answer this. And the devotee says, "Well, you're my guru, you're enlightened. If you can't answer me this question, who will tell me? Who can teach me this? No one else can do it. You have to teach me." So he says, "Okay." And the disciple experiences the same phenomena. He experiences this whirlwind of a black hole where the room around him disappears into this vast nothingness, this void of like being in space with no stars kind of feeling. It's all disappearing, all form, all atoms, there's nothing. It's just going. His own body dissolves, it disappears. He's got no physical body. Vivekananda's body disappears. There's just nothing. It's all formlessness, pure potential. And the devotee gets it and he goes, everything is Maya. The world, you, me, the spiritual work that we're doing in the world, it's all a dream. It's all this play of consciousness. And then the wave function collapses and they're back again in a physical body. And Vivekananda says, very good. Now you can either go sit in a cave and meditate forever, or you can come and help me. And that's the story. I find it mind-blowing. I think that's amazing. And there are numerous saints through numerous ages of time that have very similar experiences. I can give you a more modern example of this, where there was a great saint in India called Ramana Maharshi, Sri Ramana Maharshi. And Ramana Maharshi had a devotee called Annamalai Swami. And in one instance, Ramana Maharshi gave Annamalai a hug. And in that hug, Annamalai lost consciousness of the world. He disappeared into nothingness. This state is a particular kind of, it's a word called samadhi. And samadhi is an absorption into consciousness where you lose the presence of a physical body and the physical world. You're absorbed into this deep state of consciousness, and your, for want of a better word, individuality is temporarily dissolved, and you experience this bliss of being formlessness. There are many examples of being spontaneously going into this samadhi state. That has been established in India for thousands of years. It's been written about, talked about. It didn't collapse the society in India. The world carries on. People are very adaptive and can handle a lot, in my opinion. It's one of the reasons why humans have survived so long, is because of how good we adapt to changing circumstances and new information. So when you consider the world is more like a dream, an appearance in this universal consciousness, then you can start to appreciate and understand that if everything is this pure consciousness with an infinite potential, we could think of it as the mind of God. I know there's probably some atheists watching this that are going to obviously have a hard time believing any of this and reject it, and that's fine. I was also atheist for, I think, 33 years of my life. I was strongly atheist, very, very much so. And it was only after some experiences that my view changed. Thinking that the world can't handle this kind of information, I think, is ridiculous. Personally, I think everyone has a right to know that exists. It is freely available information. There's plenty of books on saints. You can learn about it yourself. I think most people just don't even recognize that that's a thing, that there are great souls in the world that have experienced higher states of consciousness. And we're going to get into some of the experiences that humans can achieve by giving you some examples, So one thing I want to get across is that enlightenment is an actual possibility in the universe. There is a potential for every human being, every animal to realize the reality. So let's talk about human potential. This is something that has recently been talked about by Jeremy Corbell on the Weaponized podcast. It's been talked about by Ross Coulthart on News Nation. It's been talked about by Dan Farrer from The Age of Disclosure. And Dan Farrer mentions that he had heard a story from a high-ranking general. He had the story of being in the presence of a dying alien, an extraterrestrial that was dying, about to die, telepathically communicated to the person that you humans don't understand your own potential. You don't understand your own potential. Before we carry on with the saints, I'm going to give you an experience from another extraterrestrial, the one with the red eyes that crashed in Virginia in Brazil that James Fox did a documentary on called Moment of Contact. And there is a book called UFO Crash in Brazil by Dr. Roger K. Lear. In that, Roger Lear interviews one of the doctors in the hospital who tells him that the doctor was in the room with the alien on the bed, and the room starts to fill with a kind of a green gas. And he walks up to the alien, looks him in the eye, and he gets pulled into these red swirling eyes, like they're like swirling like red liquid. And it goes deeper and deeper, and then he gets this downloads of information into his brain. And they're being communicated a number of things, but the only thing the doctor was willing to say was that this alien being felt sorry for the human race. He showed empathy and compassion and felt sorry for us for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was that we didn't understand our own potential, that we had all the same potential and abilities that his species could do, but we didn't seem to know how to do them. And he felt sorry for us that we didn't know. And those abilities included being able to heal your own body, either individually or in a group, through the power of your mind. Essentially, you could self-heal. You didn't need to go to a hospital and rely on drugs and medication. Your body had all the potentiality to fix itself if you know how to do it. In this case, the doctor says that this alien had broken a bone. I think it was in his leg. I would have to check the book again, but I think it was in his leg. And the bone had fully repaired remarkably quickly, and there was no break. And the doctor didn't fix it, obviously. The alien fixed itself and healed this bone. And so it was an example of we have the same abilities as them, this self-healing. And the other thing that he felt sorry for was that we didn't seem to realize that we were actually spiritual beings only living in a temporary shell, which reminds you of Bob Lazar when he read at S4 that the aliens refer to humans as containers, as a temporary container, because what you actually are is a spiritual being that has lived through many lives and through many bodies. And so I don't think we're going to get into reincarnation into this video specifically, but I do want to do a video on reincarnation later. So just put that in your back pocket. You don't have to believe it, you don't have to accept it, but you can just hear it and just let it simmer, just let it sit. And so if you're a spiritual being, that means you're not your physical body. The body is a shell, it's a container, it's a temporary vessel for the consciousness. You're the spiritual being, which is consciousness, which is the spirit. And so there are examples of souls that have become closer to God or closer to truth, or have purified to such an extent that when they're born in a human body, they become these great saints, these teachers of the world, these spiritual beings that demonstrate different abilities, which is what I want to talk about in this video. Human potential that seemingly most people don't even know is a possibility. And that's why I want to do this video, because the people watching this might not even know that this exists, but it does. And I'm going to give you some examples. Spiritual practice. This includes meditation, quietening the mind, losing the attachment to being the physical body only, and going deeper into meditation, again quietening the mind, or focus on God or devotion and love towards the divine in any form. And that might be hard for certain religious groups to accept, but all religions are equally as good in this regard. It doesn't matter if you want to worship Jesus Christ, if you want to worship Allah, if you want to worship Krishna or Shiva. It's all the same in that regard. Like if you're focusing on your concept of God, it's all that matters, regardless of what anyone says. The same type of experiences have happened throughout history in Christianity, in Islam, in Hinduism, in various different religious groups. Certain people who have achieved this state all say the exact same thing. So that proves the point that it doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or a Christian or a Hindu, you get to the same place, you get to the same state. That should just end the argument there. So if you think of the body as a temporary shell and that there is an individual soul, a spiritual being which transcends that body and goes through numerous incarnations, when a soul has practiced spiritual discipline over multiple births, they start to develop things, spiritual abilities, spiritual visions. These things are called siddhis, spiritual powers, spiritual abilities. I'm going to give you a few examples. One of them would be out-of-body experiences. You gain the ability and get to have the experience of leaving your physical body and having then the conviction that I am more than my body. So leaving the physical body, an out-of-body experience, that's one example of a spiritual event that can happen. Other events include manifestation. You don't have to believe what I'm about to say, but just kind of, again, put it in the back pocket and just hear about it. So there are saints in India and what you call yogis or sadhus, people that do spiritual practice. And I can describe people, human beings like you or I, but that have done some spiritual work, and they are able to do things you might consider a miracle, like move an object with their mind, like a telekinesis. Other abilities include being in more than one place at the same time, being in bilocation, being at two places. I'll give you an example. So there's a particular yogi called Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda. He had a guru called Yukteswar Giri, and there's a book called Autobiography of a Yogi, which I recommend reading. It's quite fascinating. And Yogananda had this experience where his guru was on a train coming into town from out of town, and he had to meet him at a train station at a particular time. His guru manifested in front of him, like imagine someone teleporting in front of you. It just appeared in front of him out of nothing. And Yogananda was like, wow, like his mind was blown. He touched his guru's feet to check that it was real and he could feel his feet. His guru spoke to him and said that this experience was God's will and that God had wanted him to have this experience, and basically reiterated what time he would be at the train station, and then vanished, disappeared. He was simultaneously on the train and in front of Yogananda, so he's in two places at the same time. There's more than one saint that kind of thing has happened to. And so when people are very advanced and they have very, very little ego to even no ego, these things that you might call miracles happen, but they are spiritually gained through spiritual effort, through good karma, you might say, like service to others, being loving, kind, honest, telling the truth. Interestingly, when you listen to the telepathy tapes with the children that are autistic, non-speaking, non-verbal children, one of the kids, they develop this kind of telepathic ability and meeting on what they call the hill, where they learn from teachers and things like that, psychically, I guess. But one of the boys, I remember, he said to his mother, "You don't get these abilities by lying. You don't gain telepathic abilities if you're someone that makes things up and lies. You only get it by telling the truth." because telling the truth is one of the spiritual practices that telling the truth, all these good qualities, love, kindness, compassion, truth, it's all divine qualities, it's higher qualities spiritually. When you think of deceit and lying and meanness and aggression and nastiness, all these kind of lower base emotions, these are not in line with a spiritual path. They strengthen the ego, and they make other people suffer, and they make you suffer. So I'm going to read for you a little bit from this particular book, which is absolutely fascinating. It's a fantastic book. And I'm going to tell you about a saint that lived a long time ago, and he was called Sambhari Baba. And this is a sadhu who had gained a number of spiritual abilities. Before I continue with the book, I only listed off a few abilities like manifestation, as well as being able to move objects with the mind. Another one is that certain great souls, and a great soul in Vedic or Hinduism is called a Mahatma, which means great soul. But these great souls can sometimes do other things, which include having a one-pointed thought on a particular thing, and if it doesn't exist in the universe, it will be created for you. And if it does exist in the universe, it will appear in front of you. And so it's like spontaneous manifestation, where the field of consciousness, or the pure potentiality, creates that object out of the pure potential and manifests it in front of you. I think personally that some of these beings, these higher, what we're thinking of as extraterrestrial beings, are more like multi-dimensional beings, and that they create certain things through this technique of mind intention because they have a better understanding of reality. And so when you think of a craft that has no seams, no rivets, no joints, and it's controlled by the mind, it's because it was created by the mind. It was pulled out of the nothingness, the pure potential. Just a theory, but based on what I hear about the Indian saints, that would make a lot more sense. But an example of this is Jesus Christ. Jesus famously was, pulling bread out of a basket and fish and feeding however many people it was, but a lot of people from a tiny little basket, where he's spontaneously bringing bread to feed everyone. I'm going to give you an example of other miracles, and there's so many from so many different saints. I find it personally incredibly inspiring because these saints are so full of love, and so there's no ego. They're selfless. They serve people. They're on this earth to serve and to uplift the spiritual energy of the planet and to help people. I think people should have a great level of respect for them, and I hope the people that are watching this, again, reserve any kind of judgment. This is a story I'm going to read you again of Sambhari Baba, and so it goes like this. One morning, a devotee who lived about 20 miles away came to the ashram for darshan, but he had to reach his home for some work that evening. So he thought he'd receive darshan. Darshan, for anyone that doesn't know, is the sight of a holy being, or it's like seeing Jesus in person, or seeing the Buddha, or it's seeing someone that is holy, someone that has a divine awakening with your eyes. That's darshan. So he thought he'd receive darshan, rest a little, take some prasad. Prasad is a food offering, so you eat a little bit of food that's offered to you, and then set out on a journey home. When he had his darshan, or sight of Baba, Baba meaning the Guru, Baba said, "You have plenty of time, have food and then go." The man agreed, thinking the food will be ready soon and I can set out in an hour or two. A few minutes later, about 50 or 60 more devotees turned up and food had to be cooked for them. Then some more people arrived, and by the time the food was ready for everyone, it was about 4 in the afternoon. By the time everyone has eaten, it was close to sunset. The man realised it was quite late and thought that there was no point in heading home now, as he was already late. He decided to stay in the shop across the river for the night and leave for his home before sunrise the next day. Just as he was heading to the shop, Baba, Sambari Baba, called out to him and said, "Okay, now that you have food, you should head home." The man felt bad, thinking that Baba, who had made him stay there the whole day, was now asking him to go home now that it was already too late. He walked a few steps and then totally forgot about his intention to stay overnight at the shop. He started walking home. He walked the entire distance of about 20 miles and reached the fields near his home in a sort of a daze, unaware of the journey. At the time, it was the month of the lunar calendar, which falls around October in the solar calendar, and women and children were harvesting in the fields. On seeing him from a distance, his children exclaimed in delight, "Father is home!" And this woke the man up from his daze, and he realised he had reached home. However, what took him by surprise was that it was the same day, and around the same time as when he had left the ashram, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He was lost in thought. How did I get here? I can see that I walked, but the journey usually takes 6 or 7 hours, so it must have taken me that long, but the time is still the same as when I left. He was greatly puzzled and could not work out what had happened, so he talked to the villagers and explained his dilemma. On hearing his story, the villagers realised that it was Baba's Leela. Leela means play. So the guru had created this situation. That it was Baba's Leela, and shared their thoughts with him. The man was moved by Baba's love and how Baba had taken care of his desire to reach home by sunset that day. He understood that when a siddha is a great soul, when a siddha asks one to do something, one should follow instructions without any doubt, regardless of how it feels at the time, because a siddha can easily do things that we think are impossible. There are numerous miracles by numerous saints, and these saints are amazing. They can appear to you in dreams and help you in dreams. There's so many stories I could tell you that would blow your mind. But these are people these are souls in a human body. They look like a normal person, but they've done this spiritual practice for multiple lifetimes and have reached this higher state of consciousness. And so when we talk about human potential, what we're talking about is the evolution of the soul to become more and more divine, closer and closer to God, to love, to truth, to reality. It's amazing. That's not a scary truth for the world to find out, that you have divinity inside you, that you yourself can experience that and feel the love of that and be embraced by that as part of this spiritual family, that everyone in the universe are spiritual beings, that all the aliens that we think of as aliens, including demons and angels, they are all appearances within the consciousness. They are all spiritual beings. Even a demon still has divinity inside them, as hard as that's going to be for people to wrap their minds around. Demons are also talked about by different saints. I'll give you an example, but I'm not going to say the saint's name because he preferred privacy, but I can relate the story to you. So I'm going to keep his name private and his image private. He's since passed away. He's no longer living in a body. However, I'm going to recount the story for you. So this particular Indian saint was walking down a train track at night, and he liked to go swimming at I think 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. He would go swim in a lake, and he said that this was a habit that had carried over from a previous lifetime. So in another birth, it's a habit that he had that was quite strong, carried over into the next birth. And so the qualities of your current birth follow through into the next one. Let's circle back to the saint. So the saint's walking down a train track at night to go swimming, and walking towards him is a demon. And there's two train tracks, one going this way, one going that way. And he's walking on this track, and the demon walks past him on this track. And he describes that the demon has got little bells around its ankles, and it jingles as it walks. It can literally hear it. And so these saints also have a different kind of vision. Normal humans don't have we have a very limited visual spectrum of light that we can see. An enlightened saint, a highly evolved spiritual being, a higher soul, this light spectrum increases and they see a broader range of light spectrum and a broader range of reality in which they can perceive angelic presences and demonic ones. And so according to these saints, who personally I trust and believe their accounts are true, demons are real, angels are real, they're talked about. The saint said that demons cannot actively hurt you apart from through fear. They can instill fear, they can scare you, but that's all they can do. And he says the only way you can die from a demon is through dying of fear, like shock and fear. And that if you stay calm and you don't react and you're, not afraid, they have literally no power over you. And he also said that if you essentially repeat the name of God, whichever name you want to say, whether it's Jesus Christ or whether you use an Indian deity like Ram or Shiva, or if you're, Muslim, you could say Allah, whatever it is. But if you focus on God and you verbally say the name, the demons basically don't like it and go away and leave you alone. So I find it so amazing and fascinating. It's something I feel happy talking about it because I love it so much. It's beautiful. So he saw a demon and it's got little bells on its ankles and it walks past him, doesn't bother him, just walks straight past. He had another experiences of a demon where he was sleeping in a small hut that he'd built, and it was late at night, I think close to midnight from memory, and the demon had climbed up a tree and was violently shaking the branches to try and scare people. And it was just this angry spirit that wanted to scare people. It was just, that's its character. And he just ignored it, and eventually the thing went away. I find these stories fascinating. I hope you're enjoying it. Again, you don't have to believe any of it. You can just take it as a story, put it in the back pocket. It's interesting to listen to at the very least. Another example of Sambari Baba, which I found quite fascinating, and I can't quite find the page in the book, but at night time he would go into his little hut, his little tiny little house, and no one would be allowed to see him between certain hours, which might have been something along the lines of between 1 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the morning. Those were his private hours, but he wouldn't sleep. He would be in his little hut talking to beings that were not normal. They were not from here. They were otherworldly beings that could manifest themselves, and he would have conversations with these higher beings. And very interesting. I'm going to tell you another story, and this is by the saint that I'm respecting the privacy for. But he described being sick. His physical body got sick, and he describes a blue being appeared out of nothing, just appeared in front of him and healed his body. So this blue being repaired somehow, did something with his body and fixed him, healed him, and then disappeared again. These blue beings are known as Siddha. Siddha means a spiritually perfected being. These are beautiful beings. They serve God. They're multi-dimensional. They live in a world that's not physical like our world. They live in a higher dimension, a higher frequency, a higher vibration, and their world is more subtle, more dreamlike. this world you can't tell this world is a dream. It feels solid, but in their world it's more subtle. It's more made of a more subtle kind of consciousness, and they live in this world. They can move into different dimensions, different worlds, and they're known for healing people. And in fact, there's a person I'm going to talk about a little bit in the video too, who's a modern alive person today who demonstrates siddhis, spiritual powers. Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't want to sound like I'm advertising him, because I'm not. I've never been to any of his events, because he does charge money to go to his events, which will turn a lot of people off. I appreciate it. I'm using it as a case study, as an example. So Joe Dispenza has developed siddhis, spiritual abilities, and some of those include healing, but he also teaches people how to heal themselves. And you don't have to pay to go to his retreats. You can just listen to his interviews on YouTube for free, and he'll give you all the information you need to do it at home by yourself. It's to change the way that you think and feel, and to create what he calls brain and heart coherence. I'll let you look into it if you're interested. But there are hundreds and hundreds of people that have gone, that have healed. And again, like Virginia, the alien said, that we have the ability to self-heal, but we don't know how. Joe Dispenza's proving this right now. They're doing peer-reviewed studies on it. There's a university studying with him, doing brain scans and blood work, and they're really putting out scientific papers on it. It's quite remarkable. They're studying mystical experiences and the effects that it has on blood and brain. It's amazing. There are people healing from cancers, blind people seeing, deaf people hearing, people stuck in a wheelchair for the first time getting up and walking again. I mean, absolutely remarkable things happening. And in some instances, people have described seeing blue beings. And I'm going to link in the description a woman that was amazing, that experienced these blue beings healing her. She had some problems with her intestines from childhood, and basically she was suffering constipation through all her adult life, and it took her hours to go to the toilet, and it was just very unpleasant for her. This blue being I think there was two of them, and they were putting their hands in her body, through her body, pulling out her intestines and straightening them out, and correcting things and moving her body in all sorts of weird positions and putting it all back again. And at the end, it sounds ridiculously wild, but she's very sincere, and I do believe her when she says it. Fascinating, by the way. Check it out in the description if you want to see that.
And these blue hands come out from behind the curtain, and they start working on me. And I knew that it was because I had fear. And so I said, I surrender. Like, I'm going to surrender. So they came out from the curtain. And I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoon where they take somebody by the ankle and they lift them up and their head is hanging down and all the coins fall out of their pocket. So there were two of them, and they picked me up and they started shaking me. And like, I could not duplicate the positions that my body was in. Literally at one point I was on my tailbone, and my head was all the way back, and my legs were up in the air, and they started pulling what looked like intestines out of my body. And I was like, I said to them, "Are you kidding me? You're going to pull that out of me now in front of all these people?" And they, they're very to the point. They said, the people's eyes, or how'd they say, their eyes are closed, you're fine. And they just kept pulling and pulling and pulling him. And it was painful. It was painful because that was stuff that had been in there for a really long time. So then, they threw me on my right hip, and I was literally balancing on a spot on my hip about that big up in the air, and my arms were, and they started taking a shunt, and they were jabbing it into my kidney. And I said, "Are you kidding me? What are you doing? That hurts." And they said, "Your kidneys function slow." And so then they whipped me around like a rag doll, and they did the same thing to the other side. and I'm a marathon runner, so I had been suffering with an encapsulated toe joint that I didn't even think about. And so they said, point your toe as hard as you can. So I pointed my toe as hard as I could, and the energy that was in that toe joint shot up into my calf, and my foot contorted to the side like this, and I don't even know how it did it. I don't know how my ankle bone didn't break, and all the energy went up into my calf, and they reached in and they grabbed it out of there. I mean, and they shook me around a few more times, and this is like, I don't know how long, it's not that long, and they gave me the once-over, the Blue Man Group once-over. I have the healing, I go home for 3 days. I literally, like when my husband would come to hug me, I would be like, ooh, because I had this energy emoting, like my pupils were dilated, and I was like, gag, 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 and I didn't have very good words, but on the 3rd day, I started to have normal bowel functions. And it's never happened in my life. I have never in my entire life been able to not have incontinence without aid. And since Niagara Falls, no problem. I can eat pizza, I can eat cheese, I can eat nuts, I can eat gluten. Now I don't, but I tried all those things when I got home. Like, I said, I can't have cheese, it'll slow my log ride down, is what I would call my colon, a log ride. And so I have no problems, like zero problems. So what happened to me, I'm sorry this is so long, but okay, so what happened to me is I came home so committed to the breath work, and the beings began to work on me at home.
She was completely healed afterwards. She can eat anything she wants. She's no longer constipated. Whatever that experience was, correct a lifelong health condition. Remarkable. There are other peoples that saw angels, these 9, 10, 11, 12 foot tall beings of light.
Saturday morning, when we're doing the pineal gland meditation, when I walked into the room, I felt this angelic presence everywhere, and I smelled jasmine and rose. And it was I thought that the room was sprayed with something. I was convinced that everyone could smell it. And I wasn't sure what was the second smell, but rose was recognizable to me. And it was just filled with love, if you may. And you know how you smell something, and after a few minutes you get used to it, so you're not aware of it anymore? I could smell it and inhale it every single time I would take a breath in. So that was incredible, but I was not aware that it wasn't the fragrance in the room. So I saw during the meditation the beings of light, many of them, and I saw them all the way around, holding the grid for all of us. They were guarding all of us, and then there were many angelic presences in the corners. And that was absolutely incredible, actually, because right during this meditation, I came to awareness that this was my gateway to go home. And I saw a light of being on both sides of me, and I kept telling them that I'm ready to wake up. But the problem was that I didn't want to come back, and I literally told them that I wanted to die in the physical form. The feeling was so strong for me that I completely disassociated with the whole material world altogether. And I just realized how much I've been longing it and how much I've missed it. I become aware of everything. And as we were doing the meditation, and Dr. Joe, he was going to the next step. Before he was going to the next step, I knew what he was going to do, because I knew that I did it many times before, as if you were watching a Matrix movie and they do the call out. I was like, I know, this is my chance to go. So as I was seeing the beings of the light, and they were really tall and formless, you could just see the silhouettes of them. They were initiating me. And in the end, they didn't let me go because first of all, my understanding was this is not an agreement. Dr. Joe would never allow anyone to die during this, and that it wasn't my time to go, and I have a mission to conclude. But during the same pineal gland meditation, the order of the universe, the coherence of everything, the sacred, everything just, not that made sense, but I remembered everything. It became clear to me. I knew exactly who I was, and like I said, I didn't want to associate with the human form. So
amazing. So what we can conclude is that it's a spiritual universe, and you're a spiritual being that's lived multiple lifetimes, that spiritual truth is love. And when you start to realize that, your heart opens up and you experience more love, more experiences can happen, and then eventually these souls can become Mahatmas, can become Siddhas, can become great souls, great saints, and you develop things, you know, that would be considered magic. Very beautiful. I don't think there's anything to fear whatsoever. I'm going to give you an example of healing from Sambhari Baba. Baba told me that he preferred to set up his ashrams. An ashram, you could think, in a Christian idea, you could think of it as a little church. It's like a small temple or a church or a holy building. So Baba told me that he preferred to set up his ashrams in places. It gives Indian names of towns here, which are difficult for me to pronounce, because they were very quiet and peaceful spots, away from the hubbub of large populations. He also told me that he was from Punjab and used to work for the government. Baba was a saint of the highest caliber. He could read people's minds, and he healed people, many people, of all sorts of afflictions. And one day, a leper came to the ashram in Pudampuri, and Baba asked him to open a store and keep a profit margin of only 2%. The man did as instructed, and by the grace of Baba, he was soon healed of leprosy. And so these great gurus, these great saints, and this is, again, numerous saints have done this through history, through different times. It's not just one. I'm reading from one example here, but it's many. And so these God-realized souls can heal people, but it's not. You shouldn't get the wrong idea that it's them as an individual healing someone miraculously. It's the power within them that does it, and the power that is within them is God. And if you don't like the concept of God, just think of pure consciousness. You don't have to use the word God if it makes you uncomfortable. You can think of consciousness, and that consciousness is a universal consciousness. It's love and coherence at the core of it, and it's this consciousness that creates the healing. But these gurus can take on the karma or the destiny from their devotees to help them out of compassion. And so the guru here is basically, it's like God giving an instruction. Okay, you're going to set up a business, but your profit margin is going to be very small. This is going to be part of your spiritual practice. They call it sadhana, spiritual practice. And that through following that instruction, which is divinely given, that on the completion of that, the person is healed. The bad karma is taken away. And there are numerous stories where the guru or the saint tells someone to do something in order to burn up some kind of bad karma, some negative thing that would have happened to them. They stop it from happening. They take it away from that person. And in some cases, they actually absorb the sickness into themselves. And so that saint will take on the pain and the illness, and they will burn it up in their spiritual fire in their heart, and they will heal completely fine because they're this high caliber saint. And that person is healed because it was transferred to the saint, and the saint dealt with it in his own body. But some of them can also see the future. They can also see what you were in your previous life and what you might be in your next life. And it's fascinating. I'm going to do a whole video on reincarnation and tie all that in, again, with some of the stories of Indian saints. It's a personal thing that I'm interested in. I hope that this video it's for me, it's done in the best of intentions. I have the utmost respect for these saints. I think they're beautiful beings, and I'm so grateful that they exist. And you don't have to believe anything I've said today. You don't have to believe that they exist. You can just reject it all and get on with life. But I think people deserve at least the basic of knowing that potentially that might exist for you, that might exist in the world. And people, if they're not exposed, if they don't hear about it, how would you know? I only know about it because I heard other people talking about it. At the highest levels, when Jim Semivan talks about, so circling back to Jim Semivan for a second, yeah, I could see how a president would struggle to describe all of that. This concept, this belief has been around for thousands of years. It didn't collapse society because it's already been talked about for thousands of years already. And so it's not something new. It's something very old. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's remarkable. I think it's beautiful. It makes the universe feel more inspiring. I'm going to end the video there. I hope I did it well. Again, you don't have to believe any of it. I'm just recounting stories, and you can do your own independent research if you want to or not. I just wanted to share it because it's a passion of mine. For me, disclosure includes the spiritual. It's part and parcel of it. And if disclosure comes and it does not encompass the spiritual, it's not real disclosure. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you again in another one. Take care and have a good day. Goodbye.
Obviously, the ET craft do exist. Something had to build them, so there must be aliens. And since there are and the craft are there must be some sort of factory and an entire civilization somewhere.